Hey there, everybody, and welcome back. This week, we have a real treat. We are going to talk with Mike Donnelly, who is an attorney with HSLDA. And we're going to talk about how we do this thing legally. How do we homeschool legally? What do we need to be aware of? What are some of the pitfalls that families fall into? How do you know the laws of your state? We're going to talk about all of that. So come along, let's talk to Mike Donnelly. All right, so I am very thankful to be here with Mike Donnelly of Homeschool Legal Defense Association today. So welcome, Mike. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be with you, Leslie.
Can you tell us just kind of a bird's eye view of what HSLDA is and you know, kind of how it all got started, just really the Reader's Digest condensed version here?
Well, HSLDA has been around for over 30 years as an organization. I've been working here as an attorney for over 10 years. And we started back in 1983 when homeschooling was still illegal in most places in the United States. You know, a lot of people don't realize, you know, today in 2017, where we have it so easy as homeschoolers, everything seems fine. And most people don't have problems with the authorities. But back in 1983, when we started, it was a very different story. Very few people were homeschooling. Very few people had heard about homeschooling. And it was not a legal practice in most states. And families who undertook homeschooling had some very real threats that they had to deal with. Threats of truancy, prosecution, social workers coming and asking questions. It was a very different time back in the mid-'80s for home educating families. It was a scary time. You know, fast forward 30 years, homeschooling is legal now in all 50 states. You know, HSLDA was a big part of that, fighting court cases in dozens of states, lobbying in legislatures and working with local state organizations to make sure that the laws that were passed were as good as could be. As you can imagine, back in the 80s and 90s when you know, most people thought homeschooling was kooky. The legislators were not so keen on giving people a lot of freedom, and so the laws were much more restrictive in the early days. Part of what HSLDA has done and continues to do is to try to improve the laws in all the states and to make sure that there are no legislative efforts that are successful that would infringe on our freedom. So we are looking at bills. In fact, this is the beginning of legislative season. We typically track 6,000 to 10,000 different pieces of legislation all over the country. In fact, tomorrow I'll be flying up to New Hampshire. I don't know when this will air, but I'll probably have already been up there. But I'm going to New Hampshire tomorrow to testify on a piece of legislation that would remove rulemaking authority from the Department of Education. So HSLDA stands for freedom. We stand for, you know, defending families, individual families, but also our movement in the various states and on our country and even around the world. I'm involved with a lot of international work. I'm the director for global outreach for HSLDA. And so I have the privilege of being able to go and interact with different people all over the world to advance homeschooling. So when you ask, what does HSLDA do? We do a lot.
That is really fascinating. I didn't even know the magnitude of what you all are doing on a day-to-day basis as far as the number of bills and laws that you are tracing and following up on. That's incredible. And it really highlights just how important it is for us as home educators to mind our P's and Q's, to make sure that we are above reproach, that we are doing things decently and in order. So how, from an HSLDA standpoint, from a legal standpoint, what are some of the ways that a new or veteran homeschooler really should make sure that they are doing things according to the law? How do we find that out? How do we proceed?
So one of the things that HSLDA does, of course, is to make sure that their members or our members are aware of the law. So all of our states have their own state page where we put news items as well as the law. HSLDA/your state, Tennessee, North Dakota, New Hampshire, whatever it may be. Every state has its own page with a set of laws and guidelines that our members can use to make sure that they are complying with the law, because complying with the law is important. Of course, we're always available. HSLDA attorneys are available 24/7, 365. We have a hotline for members who have a legal emergency, and we get calls all the time, both during the day and after hours, when social workers or police officers are showing up at people's door, questioning them and what they're doing with their family, whether it's homeschooling related specifically or not. Our members are allowed to call and get advice when someone from the authorities knocks on their door.
Well, my next question would be, what are some of the more common mistakes or errors or pitfalls that home educating families fall into? I think probably we'll find that a lot of this is stuff that we don't even think of, that we need to be more aware of. I know our generation of homeschoolers takes a lot for granted. So from your experience, what do you see as being a large problem or something that we all need to be mindful of?
Well, Leslie, when we get calls from people, there's a lot of different problems that people encounter. It's often related to their lack of understanding about the law. Unfortunately, laws are written by lawyers, and they can be a little complicated to understand, even homeschooling laws. In fact, especially sometimes homeschooling laws. And so people often rely on other people who tell them, oh, all you have to do is just do this or just do that. And they don't do their own research and just like go to hslda.org, where anyone can get free our Homeschooling 101 primer, which just kind of lays out what people have to do. So there's really no reason why anyone should not know. But it's amazing. Many people call us and say, I never knew I had to do this, or I never had to test, or I never had to submit this particular notification. Or on the other side, I didn't know that the school district had the authority to ask me this. Or in some cases, the school authorities didn't have the authority to ask for something, but people were giving it to them anyway, even though they didn't have to. And so there's a lot of confusion sometimes about what actually is required. And so, our members have access to ask these questions and get that kind of information. When we're getting phone calls from families who have a knock on the door, a lot of times the problems are related to them not knowing their rights. A lot of people don't realize that social workers are government authorities, and that the Fourth Amendment actually applies to them. In fact, most social workers don't realize that the Fourth Amendment applies to them, and that people don't have to just open the door and let someone from the government come into their house just because they say, I'm here and I have to do that. That's often what they'll say is like, I'm here as a social worker or police officer. Actually, police officers tend to know this a lot better than social workers, but a social worker will say, look, I'm here, I have this investigation that I have to do, and I have to come in your house, and I have to talk to your children, and I have to inspect your refrigerator, and I have to do all these things. And people just say, oh, she's saying or he's saying, I have to do this. That means I have to let them do it. And that is simply not true. The Fourth Amendment protects every citizen of the United States from a government agent coming into their home unless that agent has a valid search warrant. And that search warrant cannot be issued unless there's probable cause. And almost always that doesn't exist in the cases that we deal with.
Thankfully, I have never been in a situation where I have been confronted like that, though it often crosses my mind. And just knowing that there is an organization that I can call. We are blessed to have exposure to a lot more than most because of what God has called us to do. But there's still things that I would feel very uncertain about. And just knowing that I can rely on HSLDA and so on is a great peace of mind. Well, real quick, before we conclude our time together today, it sounds like some of the really practical steps that families can make is knowing and understanding the law, joining a group that will back them up like HSLDA will. That's very, very important for peace of mind and so on. I thought that your point about not just listening to other people, because we all go to our friends and see what they have to say, was fantastic. But are there any other just kind of baseline tips or pointers that you would give to these families as they are going forward to make sure that what they are doing is right and that they are safe?
I think you outlined it very well. If people do those things, I think they'll be fine. Of course, we encourage folks to join HSLDA so they can have access to all of our member resources and have access to attorneys and our special consultants as well, if they need some additional guidance in certain areas. But if they follow those guidelines that you just laid out, I think most people would be fine. The one thing that I would say is this, in the United States, homeschooling is legal, but I can tell you that there are efforts all over the country, often by people who don't like that or who want to put more restrictions on homeschooling because they don't think that people should be able to do what we do with as much freedom. And so, that's one of the things that I am particularly passionate about, is making sure that your family and other families are free and are not subject to unnecessary or unreasonable intrusion from the government, whether it's by law or by someone showing up on their doorstep. And that's something that, we have 15 to 20,000 legal contacts a year here at HSLDA. We have almost 100,000 families who are members, and that's a lot. What that tells me is that there are a lot of people out there who are facing issues, and it could be just homeschool discrimination. They're being treated unfairly or not according to the law, or it could be that someone's actually threatening their right to homeschool because they don't agree with what they're doing.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for being with us today. There's going to be a link down below that will give you a chance to join HSLDA, learn a lot about what they do, connect with their Homeschool 101 pages for your state. That is something you definitely want to do right away. I'm also very excited that HSLDA will be providing a number of speakers at each of our events this year. So definitely make sure you're there. Make sure that you take the time to hear them speak so that you can be as well equipped as possible for the journey ahead. So thank you again, Mike. I'm so grateful for you being here.
We are so excited to be working with you and the Teach Them Diligently conferences. We're excited to be at all four of them. And we really feel like what you and David are doing, reaching out to a new group of homeschoolers, especially the younger homeschoolers who are coming into the movement. And homeschooling is growing in the United States. It's growing all over the world. It's a very exciting time for home education in the United States, and it's great to partner with you. And thank you for what you're doing to reach out to and equip these families to do this great work.
Well, thank you again for joining us, and we will see all of you all next week. Teach Them Diligently is here to support your family's homeschool and discipleship efforts year-round. Make sure you subscribe to our channel today so you don't miss a thing.